Hey, we look live.
Yeah.
We're good.
Hey, guys.
Hey, welcome. For folks joining us live, my name is Dinesh Chandrasekhar from Cloudera, product marketing team. Welcome. We are here to join you on a very exciting live session with three exciting SMEs from our own Cloudera. Joining us today is Kenny Gorman, product owner for the stream processing product line at Cloudera, and Martin Balassi, who heads up engineering for Flink, and Dan Schaffelson, all of field engineering at Cloudera. Really exciting session. We're going to be talking about the recently finished Kafka Summit, MEM. We all attended it. I hope you did as well. So if you are joining us on the live session, please feel free to say hello, where you're from, and maybe even shout out if you attended Kafka Summit. So let us know about that. In this session, it's going to be like pretty open. We're going to be talking about what we liked, what we didn't like, things like that at Kafka Summit. Maybe share some perspectives on the Kafka community and some Flink conversations as well, because we see all of them being tied together. So we'll get into some of those. And of course, if you have any open questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll pick it up, and we will respond to that as time permits. It's going to be a brief half an hour kind of a discussion. So let me just kick it off. Kafka Summit just got over. I was there for the last couple of days and attending a few sessions. We joined in for the office hours and so forth. Cloudera had a really awesome booth, virtual booth, and it was very well attended. We had a lot of good interactions with the audiences there. And I loved, some of the sessions that were neutral, talked about thought leadership and stuff. My personal favorites beyond Kenny's own session, that he did at Cloudera, which we'll get to in a second, is that I liked a couple of ThoughtWorks sessions. I'm a big fan of Martin Fowler and his team, and so there were a couple of good sessions from ThoughtWorks. They spoke about data mesh and all that, really hot happening topics, good thought leadership content. I really loved it, and alignment of how Kafka fits into that kind of a architecture, makes it a lot more interesting. So I'm going to open it up to our panel here, and I'm going to ask them to chime in. So Kenny, why don't you kick it off? What did you like at Kafka Summit? Tell us about it, and your thoughts, perspectives.
Sure. Yeah, first of all, this is maybe the third Kafka Summit that I've been part of. And first of all, the community is awesome. The community is growing. It's the kind of questions and problems and solutions that the community is dealing with overall are super cool. I think this year, from our perspective, we've been thinking a lot about streams and batch and how those work together, or bounded and unbounded streams, if you want to think of it that way, and how they work together, and the problems and interesting dilemmas that those cause for customers and how we solve them. So that's been kind of front and center for me. I think, obviously there's interesting things around what KIP 500 and those types of things in terms of Zookeeper and stuff. But specifically my session, I really was excited about the questions. I think they were rich and deep and well thought out. And I think people are attending and really learning and curious as to all the different solutions. So I was really encouraged and excited to kind of get that feedback as well.
Very nice. And talking about attending repeat Kafka Summit, I'm wearing my Kafka Summit 2018 shirt.
There you go.
All right, Dan, over to you. What did you think?
Yeah, so I've obviously been to a few of these as well. And what I really like about it is every time I go, there's this great mix of really forward-looking stuff about where it's going, now, next year, in a few years, and things that are coming down the line to try and improve problems that some people just haven't even thought about yet because they're in sort of niche corners of the community. And you can hear about that and you can be like, oh yeah, that's really interesting. I'm looking to see where that goes. And I think then also you get these really interesting implementations from different parts of the community as well, what they're trying to do, the different scales, the weird places they put Kafka.
Right.
Just the weird deployments that people are doing just to prove probably that they can in some cases, actually. So I really enjoy that stuff. I think my favorite session was because, apart from obviously Kenny's, is I helped the launch session with MM2 when it was first put in 2.4. I was there for that and helping that. So it's good to see that the uptake on that, a couple of different talks on it, another talk from Ryan about it as well. And then there's a really good article that was referenced where eBay has been doing huge amounts of investigation around use of it in different ways. And it's just great to have seen something like that that's gone in and then seen such wide adoption and how people are using it and breaking it and doing stuff with it. So, yeah.
Very cool. And MM2, for the reference, for folks that are joining us, it's Mirrormaker 2, one of the open source contributions that our engineering team did like a couple of years ago. So that's pretty cool. And we have a lot of folks joining us from Spain, India, Canada, and so forth. So I guess it's all for our rock star, EMEA rock star, Martin Balassi. So tell us your perspectives, Martin.
Muted, Martin.
Can't hear you, Martin. No, still can't hear you.
Oh no, computer says no.
There's an audio input button near the mute button, I guess. Maybe you can try that.
Not yet.
Man.
It was what he was going to say was probably like very controversial, so we just
yeah.
We censored that right there.
Yeah, we've got a 5-second front run on this thing and an ML model checking if you say bad words, and then it just mutes you.
How about now?
There
now
you go.
we can hear you, buddy.
Okay, cool. So I really enjoyed this specific Kafka Summit, looking at the talks, because overall, when it comes to an Apache community and a software community in general, I tend to look towards things that Dan just mentioned as well, where I look for interesting use cases where that specific technology is delivering value already, and I'm looking towards the future of new functionality that is coming down the pipe. And I would like to make a recommendation for our audience today in both of those categories. The one in terms of use cases that excited me the most is a talk from Adidas, specifically Jose Cristobal's session on navigating the observability storm with Kafka. That was an awesome talk. It really hit home in terms of how do you manage a whole organization and the whole software engineering department and use the power of Kafka to collect logs from everywhere. They made this scale to huge amounts of input messages and made sure that they can observe what their organization is doing, both in terms of their own engineering and actually the business. So the whole premise of the story was, in these times, you should be able to treat your online store as your biggest store, specifically for a company like Adidas. And it was awesome the way they built it. And they are not alone with this approach. If you go back a couple years, I've listened to a talk, actually, I think that was at the Flink Forward event, where specifically AWS talked about how they build their own monitoring on top of Kafka and Flink in their specific case. So that's one session that I would definitely recommend to check out. The other one that I would recommend in terms of things coming down the pipe and functionality is Matthias J. Sachs's talk on temporal joins, because that was really exciting for me in terms of things that you can do in streaming and how a simple concept like joins does change a bit with near real-time semantics, how you should think about that. Matthias is awesome in giving you ideas and representing this visually. He has ties to both the Storm and the Flink communities. I think he's committed in all three projects, Storm, Kafka, and Flink. And so he knows very well how to tie together streams messaging and stream processing. So those are the two sessions that I would love to recommend.
Very cool. Thank you, Martin. And I do agree on the Adidas one. I liked how they broke up the 4-layer architecture and explained how the observability patterns can be implemented. That was pretty cool. But let's talk about the more Uber session that I liked, Kenny's session. So Kenny, you did a session at Kafka Summit. I had to do the plug.
Yeah.
You paid me for it.
Yeah.
So tell us about your session for folks that are joining us now, and tell me quickly about what you spoke about, what the crux of it was,
Sure,
and why maybe people should listen to it on demand.
Yeah, I mean, the thing we were talked about was, basically advanced SQL and how that is different and how it works in a streaming context. And I know that, and I tried to focus on kind of a little bit more of the advanced examples, although there are quite a bit more, we can go quite a bit more deep. But I think the thing there is that understanding, that SQL can be a first-class citizen, and I know that's in the last year or so that's become quite popular. How you can run queries and how to think about results, and how do you, like, even simple things like, how do I see the results of my query? Where do they go? We just talked about temporal joins a little bit, things like joining data and how that works. Joins are particularly tricky. And then, we showed a little bit of, our solution, SQL Stream Builder, running some queries and talked a little bit and reasoned about those queries a little bit as well. And doing things like match recognize and CEP right within SQL. I'm not sure if everybody knows they can do that. Super powerful framework and really an easy way to construct like pretty bitchin' stream processors. So, that's kind of where the talk was about and what we were trying to achieve there. And it's fun. I love the Kafka Summit talks and I do wish that we were all in person again though.
Of course. Yeah. Those are always fun. And for folks that are joining us again, feel free to say hi, where you're from. Also post any questions for Kenny, Dan, and Martin as you're joining us. I also want to mention that at Kafka Summit this year at EMEA, we had a nice booth, where we had 4 office hours, where we showcased the demos. Our own Gyula and Tim Span and others, showcased that. Dan also was there, part of these office hours. We did showcase pretty much all of the Cloudera Dataflow stack. And for folks that do not know CDF, Cloudera Dataflow is our edge-to-cloud real-time streaming data platform. And it does include this concept of data ingestion, streams messaging, and stream processing and analytics as 3 tenets of the platform, thereby combining all of the powers of NiFi, Kafka, and Flink. And so we did showcase all that, but one of the things that Kenny mentioned in his talk just now is SQL Stream Builder, which is one of the newer additions to our stack, which is a layer on top of Flink that allows you to query Kafka and Flink data very easily with just SQL. And that's the power of what it does in terms of liberating access to real-time data. So if you haven't checked out SQL Stream Builder, definitely ping us. We'll be happy to hook you up.
And just add a little thought there. The interesting part about that is obviously Flink has been something that Cloudera has been invested in for some time. Obviously, we have Martin here, who's obviously a PMC member for Flink, and we have a ton of talent around Flink. And what's been cool in the last year, just a little insight, is that our team came to live here at Cloudera now, and SQL Stream Builder came to live at Cloudera. And the goal was always to make a kind of a front end for Flink, because the characteristics of Flink are so good in terms of stream processing around correctness and state management and scalability, all the things a first-class SQL engine should have. Flink had those things. And so it's been really cool to see that evolution and to demo it. And I saw Tim's demo. He demoed even some of the newer stuff. So check out his session. He did his is like going to a Tim demo is like walking into the ring with a WWF wrestler, right? He just barrels you over, right? And so that's awesome. And he really showed all the features and did a great job. So that was pretty cool. And it's just nice to see. I guess my thought is it's just nice to see the things come together and start to be out in the marketplace. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, love it. So Dan, you did a couple of those office hours. Tell us about it. What did you like about it? And any specific interactions with folks? Interesting questions that came up.
So the office hours this year were really, really good. I mean, I know it's been tough times because of what's with COVID going on, but one thing that's really moved on is the ability to have these virtual sessions and for them to be really effective, interactive. People have learned a lot about them, and the technology behind the office hours that ran it was great. We had people dropping in, asking questions. You could bring people directly out of the chat channel, people attending the summit, into to ask their question live and chat about the answer. And it's not just, text interaction. So it just felt a lot more natural and really good. The demo is, really well received. People very interested in just the simplicity of SQL over a Kafka topic and not having to understand any of the details if they don't want to. I think that's kind of the key thing, right? You just say, hey, give me a console. I want to type some SQL. I want to see a result, and then it does it. And everybody loves that.
Right.
And,
that's the thing, right? That being able to just see that data, we mentioned it earlier, just to be able to pull the data out and see it and understand what's in your topic and reason about it and then do something about it. That's like a key unlock. It sounds so simple, but it's like an important piece.
Okay.
Well, it's difficult to make that that UI and UX feel straightforward, right? So you go in, you say, hey, I've got this topic. I can inspect the topic in our messaging manager. I can have a look at the data that's in there, have inspect the JSON, have the schema automatically attached. Then I can jump across and go, hey, give me my SQL interface on top of that. I want to run this query against it. Oh, yeah, that output looks interesting. Let me do this other thing. Let me mess around a little bit. Oh, I want to enrich it with some data from this other, lookup service, like a NoSQL in the platform. And then you're like, yeah, okay, I'm pretty happy with this output. Let me make it a materialized view and just publish it. So some fool can attach it with curl from a command line or an API call or something. It's such a simple workflow. It's almost boring. I like boring, by the way.
Yeah. We got a lot of questions coming in from folks that are joining us live. So do you mind if I ask you a couple of questions?
Sure.
There are a dime a dozen here, so let me just pick one that is more interesting. Maybe this is good because this topic kind of came up even in Kafka Summit about Kafka being available on AWS, Azure, and GCP as a cloud service rather than as a marketplace instead of Kinesis, Event Hub, and so forth. I think Jay talked about it from a cloud native perspective and all that. But my take on that, again, I'll give you my perspective and then I'll definitely ask you for yours, is that what we see amongst our customer base and as a need as well is that there's a tremendous amount of hybrid cloud architectures today that that seems to be kind of like the de facto way how customers are adopting the cloud. And so with our offering on Data Hub, where you can spin up NiFi or Kafka or Flink cluster so easily within a matter of minutes onto your favorite AWS or Azure or GCP, makes that the appropriate solution in terms of adopting hybrid cloud architectures and going to the cloud as well. Do you feel the same way, or is there a different take on that question? Dan or Kenny, Martin, anybody?
Well, I'll jump first, I guess. So I see a couple of different things coming up with customers and the questions about it. It's always about adoption and where people are moving, what trajectory they're on, right? Sometimes they're going to cloud, sometimes they're coming back, sometimes they're moving between clouds because maybe the CTO changed and sent down a mandate, and that happens quite a lot in large enterprises. So the ability to have the different tools in the toolkit to change direction because your boss says so is super useful, right? So you might be like, today I'm replicating Kafka from my on-prem services with like MirrorMaker 2 and SRM and our stack to AWS, and tomorrow I have to send it to Google, and then some other team comes along and goes, actually, I could really do with a copy of that in PubSub, or I need it over here in event streams because we're really deep on Azure's ML instead of something else. And just that ability to move around and just grab the right tool out of the toolbox in our platform is super popular. The second thing I'd say is that from a hybrid cloud point of view, the way that the ID broker abstracts away the need to understand all the security models, it handles your IDP integration and that sort of thing. So you can just change your mind tomorrow and go, oh, I need a thing on Azure right now. And it helps you with the policies and the security and make sure that that's equivalent to what you were doing on your other provider. That's really great as well. So it kind of, I guess all of these are to say, the platform helps get all of the stuff out of the way in terms of deployment and setup, so you can just get on with doing the streaming thing you want to do, right?
And hybrid's interesting in that way with streaming, right? Because think of it this way: if I'm just a team and I want to fire up some POC or I want to write a product like some sort of ML thing, well, my data resides on-prem, I can still use the cloud and use a hybrid design to pull the data from Kafka there to my local instance and then start running some sort of analysis. So
right.
It adds like flexibility, and maybe that's ephemeral. Like maybe that's just a project in a point in time, or maybe it's long lasting, or you want to prove, we'll look at some metrics and prove some business value or something, and then move on. Like all that kind of stuff is what the cloud is for, and hybrid architecture works great for that.
Right. Yeah. There's another thing I'd add to that, which one of our customers is doing recently. And I can't say who, obviously, but they had they sort of have a policy that says, hey, our IT department runs an audit. A ring-fenced audit cluster, and all data must come back so we can inspect and make sure you're not doing naughty things. So what they do is they actually don't care where you run your Kafka and in what service you run it in. They just use our platform to grab a copy of the thing, be it replicating the Kafka topic or using NiFi to pull the data out of event hubs or PubSub or whatever. They just grab a copy of everything. and they bring it back on-prem using that hybrid architecture, and then they inspect it, and then they tell you if you've been naughty or not. And it sounds simple, and it is simple. It should be simple, but it's also super important for those kind of regulated industries.
Yeah. There are quite a few more questions, but I want to give Martin a chance to chat about some of the exciting things that are coming up on the product roadmap as well, because I think that also feeds into a couple of the questions that are being asked on the live streams as well. So we spoke about this DIM philosophy, data in motion philosophy, but by the way, data in motion is a term that we coined several years ago, back in the Hortonworks days or something, and I see that being used now by pretty much every other vendor on the planet now, so which is a good thing. Yeah,
absolutely.
Super solid. So given our data in motion philosophy of NiFi, Kafka, and Flink working in tandem to enable your end-to-end streaming architectures, Martin, what are you most excited about? What's coming down the pipe in terms of our product roadmap, particularly to Kafka and Flink, areas that you are closely working with?
Absolutely. So the way we are building our whole philosophy and platform around NiFi, Kafka, and Flink, that really encompasses and builds on what Dan just mentioned, that we should be able to treat data, the schema of the data, and certain metadata like privileges and so on as a single unit, and being able to just grab that and replicate that. So where we are going with these products, and actually with the release of our current Flink and SQL in Stream Builder product that is coming out in 2 weeks, we are taking a big step of, you have a table in a relational data store. You would like to grab, let's say, change data, capture data off of that based on the schema that already exists there, and just pipe it into Flink, put it into Kafka, or put it into Hive or Kudu, or your choice of data store. And being able to go in and say that, yeah, I know what the schema is, I know where my data is, I would like to look at that change stream because that I can then derive business value, parallelize the processing, and so on, and do that across the stack. So whenever I have an ingestion pipeline in NiFi, that should automatically publish the schema. NiFi already knows the schema. Why would I wait and have to add that on top? Flink should already see that schema. So being able to tie this all together is very important, and we are actively working on this. The other story in term that I'm really excited about, and again, with our current release, we are taking a big step here, is being able to join across your stream and slowly changing reference data. So basically the enrichment use case, this is something that is now surfaced via SQL Stream Builder, because ultimately, and to reflect on what Kenny said and how his journey was coming from Eventador, coming from the SQL Stream Builder angle, and then seeing a bit more of Flink. I, as a long-term Flink contributor, always seen the power of Flink, but I know that we struggled as a community to talk to your everyday data analyst or data engineer. And that's big. Obviously, the devil is in the details, but we need to show that high-level, easy-to-use story so we can actually reach out to a lot of people. And this is really what we get to do via SQL Stream Builder, and that's why I enjoy and cherish that Kenny's team has joined us. So to finish my answer, these are the two things that I'm excited about this integrated schema and metadata management, and being able to more and more seamlessly switch between batch and streaming, because both of those portions are important of the equation.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. No, this is super exciting. We are really thrilled about what's coming down the pipe there. I'm going to go back to a couple of questions on the live stream as well, because there are quite a few that are coming in. And I'm just trying to sum up a couple of them together, because they seem to be on the same vein in terms of tone. ETL, this is a confusion that's coming up. Again, it's not a problem that we see typically, but seems like there are people that are confused about can we replace a particular vendor ETL product with Kafka, And that seems to be kind of like, a couple of folks have asked different product names of ETL products that they're trying to replace with Kafka. While I know the answer, I'm going to like throw it over back to like you, Dan, maybe, because you have probably the most experience in this particular context of like answering that. So why don't you respond to that?
I'm going to throw that one to Kenny.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Well, I see what we're doing here. Thanks a lot. I'll take it. I mean, look. So look. There was ETL. ETL's been around for a while, right? And ETL was typically, heavyweight processors that pulled, sometimes via SQL, sometimes via visual editors, from database to database was basically how it used to go way back in the day. And I'm speaking like 15, 20 years ago, showing my age. But ETL has been, it's the same these days. It's just that a lot of the latency has, the tolerance for latency is much lower, and the latency has to be lower. So, so, streaming ETL, as it's called, has become quite popular, and Kafka is a natural choice for that, especially when you can do things like CDC, whether it's connector based or what Martin was talking about, or however. So now you have a change stream in Kafka. Okay, that makes sense. It's serialized to a known format. You have a known schema. So it's quite natural. And so, of course, can we replace other expensive heavyweight componentry with a streaming pipeline? Yes, and we should. Things like Flink play into that very nicely. Obviously, SQL Stream Builder allows you to run SQL and build ETL processes via SQL. So that's great. And then you have all the power, recoverability, scalability, all the kind of things you're looking for from a enterprise and data center standpoint. So it makes for quite a nice architecture and allows you to focus on kind of low latency or streaming ETL. So that, I think, that's where the typically folks are thinking about these things. Martin said the devil's in the details, and right, streaming ETL, the devil's is in the details as well. But from a high level, yeah, it makes tons of sense.
Yeah,
I'm gonna add on to that because I feel bad actually for throwing it across to you. Okay. So what I observe talking with customers about this in particular is that the change in operations, the change in architectural thinking, the understanding that needs to go into moving towards a streaming pipeline, whatever their definition of streaming is, be it real time, seconds, or minutes, right? In some cases,
right.
It's a huge shift, and it takes a lot of effort. And so, if they are quite comfortable with a traditional ETL tool, that runs some queries against DB2 and off it goes, then it takes a while for them to go, oh, well, we need to do these new use cases. So we wish we had started 2 years ago on understanding streaming so we can get there now. So part of our thing is, hey, how can we get you there faster? How can we make it easier to adopt so you don't have to understand the deep complexities of temporal joins just to get going? And I think that's the biggest part of it. It's getting started, getting the first use case in, and then moving on to the super cool stuff.
Yeah, good point.
Awesome. And Dan, I know you need to drop off pretty shortly. We do appreciate you joining us. So thank you so much. If you need to drop off, we understand.
Cool.
But I'm going to continue the conversation with Martin and Kenny for a few more minutes because we feel like there are like a few areas that we haven't quite addressed yet. So I'm going to continue that and then maybe finish the conversation like in another 15 minutes or so. I'm going to ask this question over to Kenny again this time. We keep hearing this thing about Kafka is a database. Well, I mean, there are lots of truths and myths to it, but I'm just saying that, it's not really a database per se. So how do we, tell our audiences, our customers, how to look at that particular statement with a pinch of salt?
Man, you really, teed me up on that one, didn't you? No, it's cool. So look, my background's in database engineering. I've been a DBA, a old crusty DBA. That's my background as well. And look, I get, if you squint a little bit, I get where that statement's going, right? You have to squint a little bit to kind of tease it out. Klettman and others have talked about it, and they're largely right. But the thing is in the data center, if you view the data center as a larger entity, not some particular component of it, then you start to view it through the lens of maybe it's not a database, it's a component of a data center, and a data center is the important piece here, not whether something is or isn't a database. So in my view, let's use Kafka for where it's best, where its sweet spot is, right? It's an append only distributed log. It's great at doing that. And let's understand the limitations of that kind of architecture. Although, obviously, it's evolving and becoming more featureful and doing more things like, transactions and exactly once and things like this. So it's getting more powerful and it's being more helpful with a data center lens. But my opinion is it's, and I think largely Cloudera's opinion is that it's the data center that matters the most. And let's pick the right tool for the job. Obviously, we have a lot of tools in our stack. And our opinion is we're starting to see, I think when streaming first came out and people were starting to stream data and it was becoming very popular, everybody kind of went whole hog on streaming and kind of thought like, well, everything's a stream. And I think maybe the community's pulled back a little bit from that and started to say like, well, the real answer here is that boundless streams and bounded streams together is the real answer. The problem is it's tricky to weave together and use those capabilities together. I know Flink has been kind of traveling down this trajectory. It's hard work. It requires, expert engineering. Just simple joins between, a static table and a stream. Time matters. And at what picture do you look at that static table and how do you join by a timestamp? How does that work? It's not immediately capable to do that without some engineering. So I'm viewing it like in a little bit different lens. It's not whether one component's a database or not. I'm viewing it like the data center's the database, and there's components within that data center that give me capabilities. And using those capabilities smartly is the key. So.
Yeah, and I'll also add in with it depends on the use case answer as well. I think that's always there. Given that the immediacy of information is what we are all striving to get at, particularly in the context of a streaming architecture, we never mention a data lake yet because we are trying to analyze things on the stream, on the wire, and we're trying to get, what that data means to me as an enterprise, as a business user, right then and there, rather than analyzing it hindsight. So I get that. But, maybe an extension of that to Martin in terms of questions is, now that we spoke about database, that also begs the question, there is batch data and then there is streaming data. Do you see these as being treated individually, mutually exclusively by enterprises today? And do you see a convergence happening between batch and streaming in the immediate future in terms of processing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the way more and more working with our customers, the way I see batch and streaming is basically whether it's fast changing data or let's say batch could be slowly changing data. And often, let's say in let's go back to the case of Adidas, where you have a fast-paced stream like orders, and then you have another stream, quote unquote, or a batch source of the location or the shipping address of your customers, and you join orders with shipping address of your customers. Well, basically in that case, your shipping address or customer table is a lookup table that shouldn't be in Kafka. That should be in a storage format that is optimized for lookups. And obviously key value stores are the answer to that, or an index database if we want to go back towards the database angle. Whenever we are talking about storage, it is just engineering common sense to optimize that based on access patterns. And in case of Kafka, Kafka is optimized for append only distributed log, it is great at, but it doesn't make it great for a lookup table. It has certain indexing capabilities. So for example, it is indexed by time, but it has its limitations because it wants to be fast for a streams messaging system, and it is very fast for that, and obviously that comes with trade-offs. So at that point, for a stream processing engine or a streaming analytics engine, we have already established the storage portion. So now we have to do the processing portion. Then, because we have these storage capabilities that really have that differentiating power, and they contribute, but in this case, we simply have to talk to both, because ultimately a lot of our use cases have that pattern. We have a couple of streams that are fast changing and drive the business, like in the case of orders driving the business, but you have the additional sources that are optimized in a way that actually you can make decisions quickly, and you don't have to skim through a Kafka log of, oh, this customer has changed their address 5 times in the past 10 years. That wouldn't make sense.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Well,
Kenny, you want to chime in on that?
I know. I think that's well said. I mean, I think Martin laid out the kind of the use case there around like, slowly moving and fast moving data streams and using the best tool for the job. Right. And that's kind of where my head was at too in my comment. And, I mean, the key there, the key unlock is going to be that we have to have access to enough of the data sources and enough of the sinks, if you will, so that customers have choice to, marshal data and join data and do the things they need to do. So, we've been working on that pretty hard. Martin's team's been cranking on that, and we've got some great things coming out into the market to make that happen. I think Tim demoed some of it, so that there was a sneak peek there. And I think that's important, whether you're pulling data from like just some simple JDBC or it's something like Hive or Kudu. And then, how do I actually enrich a stream and do I have the grammar and the tooling I need within SQL to actually issue that command in some sensible way? And, that's Flink has been working on that. We've been working on that, or the Flink ecosystem has been working on that. And bringing those together now gives the users the tooling and grammar and structure and syntax they need to actually make that happen and make it work in a realistic and understandable way. Like I said, it gets tricky under the covers, but the goal here is that it shouldn't be. Running SQL against a database, we've done that for 30 years or whatever, and it's largely a known paradigm at this point, right? People know how to create functions, they know how to do group bys, they knew all these things. But the streaming paradigm has thrown some new extensions, if you will, or new requirements into that mix. And so as a community, we're all grappling with those things. I think it's exciting because we're right on the tip of the spear here in terms of innovation and computer science and streaming. And for me, that's the exciting part, is that the team is kind of, innovating in the wild and bringing something out where we're solving those problems. So that's super cool.
Okay. All right, we'll take one more question from the live audience. And again, if you're joining us live, you can post questions on whichever live stream channel you're joining us on. There are a couple of questions that I'm going to combine. One is a question about, I'd like to see delayed missed event alerting monitoring type of a demo, right? We are not showing demos in this session, just so to remind audiences, this is just going to be a discussion, particularly post Kafka Summit. But I know that Kenny has an awesome answer to that. And in a subsequent session, we can definitely do a similar model of a panel discussion with some live demos as well. So we can definitely showcase that. And then a related question is visualization. So data visualization, how do you do it with Cloudera? So Kenny, do you want to take those questions?
Sure. How about I do this? I'm going to give the missed data one to Martin. I'll throw that over the fence, and then I'll take the visualization if that's okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about visualization. So we materialized views are a big part of our platform. It's not just us, right? Everybody in the community, no matter what SQL tool on streams you're using, there's a materialized view thing that has come out in the last, call it, year. And the whole reason for that is to use existing tooling. Things like, Tableau or DataViz or Grafana or notebooks, Data Science Pandas and Data Science notebooks or whatever it might be. These tools need to be able to have access to streams as well. We don't want to have to put the data into a traditional database just in order to read it. It might make sense to put it in a traditional database for other business reasons, but we don't want to do it just to have access from visualization. So that's been a key unlock. I can't speak to other platforms, but from our side, we've done our best to provide the wire protocol and like a REST endpoint to allow various ways of connecting to materialized views. And then a very robust materialized view engine that's indexed basically essentially on every field. There's no DBA required. It's very fast and performant. So that's a big piece of it. And then that's the unlock for like, hey, how do I'm just using Tableau in generic sense, like my Tableau or whatever your end user tool might be, whether that be a tool that like is supposed to read a wire protocol, I call it Postgres, or maybe it's a tool that it's code. Like maybe you're writing, like I said earlier, just a second ago, maybe you're writing a model, you're building a model in Pandas in a notebook, and you want to get that data from Kafka. Well, your notebook can't ingest billions of events a day. You'll blow up your notebook. Data frames aren't designed to handle streaming data, really. So, how do I materialize that data so I can actually make sense of it? And that's why materialized views are great, because sometimes the terminology is that I can use a push query to create the materialized view, right? And so I can kind of take a fire hose of data, I can aggregate it by some key, some date, timestamp, present it as a materialized view, and then I can do a pull query against it from my notebook. And now I've got this picture of data straight from Kafka. I didn't need to put it into DB2 or something else. I didn't need to provision more storage. I didn't need a DBA. I just was able to just consume the stream directly. But I needed that view to aggregate the data by some key so that I could see the latest state of that data. And that's really the key there, is the materialized view and then the wire protocols or the access patterns to get it out to the tooling.
And I've seen you do a demo with Cloudera data visualization as well as a visualization tool to access the REST API generated from the materialized view.
Yeah, it just feels like a database, right? You just hook up and you feels like a database. You just do all the stuff you normally do, and it's awesome. It makes it super easy.
Pretty cool. Martin?
So in terms of being able to deal with late data and then have that represented in an alerting fashion, that is one of the core functionalities that on the engine level Flink does solve. So just to familiarize our audience with the general use case, often when you want to deal with streams that can be late, so the typical use case is, let's say, a telco network that is distributed across large geographies. It is often the case that you only receive the data point seconds, minutes, or even days late if there was an outage. And then you have this telco network and you want to monitor the health of it and take action if there is an outage based on the time when that sensor data was recorded. And that means that, let's say you expect that it is a maximum 5 minutes late, or 99% of the data is a maximum 5 minutes late, then you are basically presented with a conundrum. If you want to be absolutely correct, then you have to wait for days. But then if you wait for days for all the data to arrive, your measurement is actually not useful anymore for anyone, because by that time, customers will call you that, hey, my service just dropped. That doesn't make any sense. So what you want to do is be able to say that right now, after a little bit of time, based on knowing my data, I can close this window with my streaming window and say that now this is most of the data, and based on this, I get to take action. However, what happens if I get late data? Flink has built-in functionality for this. We call this the late event stream, and you can directly write queries against that as well. The usual use case would be that I do an aggregation, let's say how much was my throughput at that time. I put that to the key value store. So I handle 99.9% of the load. I don't hammer my database or my key value store. And then if I get an update to that, I send it directly, because that 0.1% of the load can go directly to the outside system. It doesn't need Flink anymore. So that's a general use case. And we also surface some of this functionality in SSB via a functionality called webhook things, where you can directly feed this information to a REST call or whatever, PagerDuty or your system of choice. So this is very important. Basically, if you combine these two, the data visualization story and the alerting story, what you get, and we are trying to shape this up, these concepts right now, is basically real-time reporting. If you think about data warehouse reporting, this is what you are doing in that case, in that reporting sense, that every day you run a query. Here, what you are trying to do is you break that query down into individual actions, and then you say that the system should take that action for you in the case of alerting, or the system should update that dashboard on the fly. So basically, these two combined are real-time reporting, and we should think about those things as one pattern of use cases. So basically, what we are focusing on right now, if you wish, the way we have been positioning SQL Stream Builder and Flink SQL, is first exploratory data analytics on Kafka streams or on any stream in general, the natural follow-up is being able to do reporting, real-time reporting based on this. So this is actually a very well-suited question, because that is exactly where we are taking the product in the next 3 months.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, I know it's been a great discussion, and still there are like more questions coming up, and we can keep answering more, but there's only so much time. But I want to thank you both for your amazing time and contributions today, and Dan as well, who left the meeting unfortunately a little earlier. But great conversation. I also want to leave the audiences with a couple of things. So if you're looking for more information on what Cloudera has to offer in terms of Kafka and so forth, there is an awesome white paper that we wrote up last year, which is called How Cloudera Delivers the Best Kafka Ecosystem in the Industry. The social media team will be posting the links to that in the chat or in the comment section. Definitely download that. Kenny has written some amazing blog posts on continuous SQL and SQL-based querying of real-time data and so forth. We'll be posting some links of that as well, so check it out. And if you need more information on Cloudera data flow, you can always visit www.cloudera.com/CDF, Cloudera data flow. So check it out. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we will definitely host more sessions like this, but with more demos. Looks like that's an interest area. So maybe we'll come back with some more demos and we'll host that. Thank you all for joining. Have a wonderful day.
Good job, Dinesh. Thank you.